Hey everybody, Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to give you guys a quick update on my experience with the Sony HX200V. Now, I can tell you guys right out of the gate, I do really like this camera, and at the current price point of $279.99, it is an absolute steal. So even though this isn't the full review, I'm telling you guys in advance, get this while you can. It is on the verge of discontinuation since the HX300 is slated at least for next month on Sony's website, but if you look on Amazon, it shows a ship date of March 10th. Now, I don't know if that's a reality, but we'll find out soon enough since that's right around the corner. I'll include links in the description to both this camera as well as the 300. So today I'm going to give you guys an update on my thoughts of this camera, even though I gave you a very quick, very strong piece of praise for it, as well as a comparison to what the 300 has to offer, and really go over the argument of whether or not the 300 is evolutionary or revolutionary. So starting off with this camera, clearly the creme de la creme of Sony's Cybershot lineup, not only because it was the most expensive when it launched last year at a retail price of $499.99, or that may have been $479.99, I believe it was $499.99 though, much like its successor now, the HX300 that I just mentioned. It offers some amazing features. If you missed my unboxing as well as overview of what this camera has, basically it aims to capture the market that is looking to get everything they possibly can, as well as the feel of a digital SLR without actually moving to an interchangeable lens camera system. So if you're shying away from really wanting to learn how to use a digital SLR, then this might be the perfect camera for you. That's what I'll start off by saying, because it does offer amazing focal range. This Carl Zeiss piece of glass that's built into this camera gives you 27 to 810 millimeters of focal range, which is quite frankly just astonishing. And the 300, the new model that comes out very shortly, does best that, which I will get to. But focusing on this, if that is enough reach for you, if you are comparing this to the current crop of mega zooms, then there's absolutely no reason you should be overlooking this camera at its current price point, because at its original price point back in 2012, it was definitely one of the best, if not arguably the best mega zoom camera, even comparing it to Pani's competing model, which has a 24x, also very nice lens in terms of aperture range. I believe it matches this at f2.8 to 5.6, which is really good to have across this entire lens. That means you're going to get pretty sharp images across the entire range, and that's what I've experienced with this model in question right here. Battery life has been amazing, and that's to do predominantly with the fact that Sony incorporates, as I showed those of you who watched the unboxing, they do use the same battery that they've been using in compact Handycam camcorders now for quite a while. So I believe my TG1, I believe that was the model number, it's a while back we're going, I used these batteries, and there they didn't perform so well, but boy, in the HX100 and 200V, they are amazing, especially since the 200 that we're looking at here incorporates so many more features. So it really does round out the fact that this has so many features built into it into an even more palatable package, because often in order to accommodate those features we have to sacrifice battery life, because not only does this have a great power zoom, which I will note it's definitely going to be recorded by this microphone. I mentioned that in the unboxing, and unfortunately that's true, but it's also something that really can't be avoided in a mega zoom camera, because after all, where are we going to put the microphones to really avoid hearing this behemoth of a zoom sliding in and out, you know, the motor pushing it back and forth. So that's a very small gripe right now out of the box. GPS also on board, so if you're interested in having a camera that when you travel is going to be able to tell you where every shot was taken, and also it's got a compass, so you'll know which direction you're actually facing, this is going to accomplish it. And so far in my use, the GPS has worked quite well, and that's in just about any environment. Even when I have taken this out shooting in the city, by city I mean Manhattan, New York, it's done exceptionally well, where I didn't think that the GPS was going to really pick up much of anything. Of course, if you're not in a dense city with high buildings that will often block direct range to satellites, then this is going to lock on very, very fast. So overall, I've already told you guys about this piece of glass, which has great focal range and a good, I would say it's relatively fast for what you're getting for such a long lens. And Carl Zeiss, well, there's nothing negative in my view to say about what Zeiss does with this. And often you could say that the Zeiss glass is really a gimmick when Sony incorporates it, and I think that is really a case-by-case basis with products itself, and in this case it is far from being a gimmick. So let's talk about the focus ring right here. In my unboxing I said I wasn't sure if it could be used as a zoom ring or just a focus ring or both, and the truth is it can be used for either or, so that's definitely a good thing. But in my experience so far, you want to be careful with how you use the zoom ring manually here as opposed to the traditional toggle for CyberShot point-and-shoot cameras, because if you are too aggressive with this, I wonder what kind of toll that will take on the motor. But that's really just a cautionary note. The optical steady shot has been amazing, not only for stills, but more importantly, that 3-point active mode for video really is where this camera blurs the line between video camera and point and shoot. And by point and shoot, this is the top end of point and shoot, folks. This is the top of the line CyberShot. You cannot compare this to the RX100 or RX1, although I will be in a moment just for form factor, as well as the NEX7 with the 18-200 E-mount native lens. But really what you have to think about is what you're looking to get out of your camera, which is something I focused on in the initial impressions unboxing video of this product. Form factor first and foremost. If you're looking for something that's going to fit in your pocket, clearly this is not the model for you. You should be looking at the HX20 or 30V, depending on what feature set you exactly want, whether or not you desire that added bonus of Wi-Fi in the 30V, but it does come at a premium. But more importantly, do you want all of the features this camera has? Because of course this does outclass both of those, even though the actual imaging is pretty much identical. Of course, those cameras stop at 20x. This has the ability to go another 10 times optical zoom, which for many of you will mean the difference between this being a usable product, what meets your needs, and the 20 or 30V. Because I know for me personally, the portability of the 20 or 30V is trumped by the imaging quality of something like the RX100. Granted, it costs twice the price of either of those point-and-shoot cameras. The image quality allows you to crop to the point where the zoom is really rendered useless. Also, the smudging and smearing, that good old watercolor effect that so many of you are familiar with, is something you will find here, but the fact that you have the optical reach is really going to reduce a lot of that. So out of the entire CyberShot lineup, there's no question this does give, in my opinion, the best imaging both on the still and video side, so it does outperform the 20 and 30V. The WX model that's coming out, brand new 300 with a 20x lens, another great addition to the lineup, is going to be interesting, but I don't expect it to have the quality that you'll find here or with the 20 or 30V. It's really more of a focus of aesthetic and making it a slimmer, more pocketable camera. So I'm not going to talk too much about that. But at $280, this is giving you all of the quality, if not more, than the 20 or 30V, which right now are still more expensive than this camera. And that's merely to do with the fact that, again, it is discontinued, eminent replacement right now at the 300, but also it's because of sheer popularity. There's obviously a much bigger market for a pocketable camera than something like this that is a bridge camera. But for those of you who don't want to buy a digital SLR and end up always shooting in automatic mode, this is probably a really good option, especially if that focal range does matter to you. Want to point out that so far flash performance has been solid, definitely better than any other point-and-shoot camera that I've dealt with in the last year or so, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that it is substantially larger, and it should be. This body does accommodate that. Granted, the body is predominantly plastic, if not all. It is lightweight. The 300, I'm not yet getting to the comparison, even though I don't have it in hand, is a heavier model, but that makes sense. It has a larger lens. In terms of the shooting modes that we have here on the dial, everything, as I mentioned before, is pretty much the same if you've used any of the recent CyberShot models, and they're all quite nice. Manual controls, fairly limited. but again, enough for someone who wants to learn about photography. And that's what this camera is all about. Whether you're a parent, as I mentioned in the unboxing, grandparent, or casual enthusiast who really isn't looking to have to dedicate taking classes or learning about what lens is going to be right for you, that's where this camera does a beautiful job at providing you everything you could possibly need. Yeah, it doesn't have a microphone input, it doesn't have raw imaging capability, but why would it? It's not targeted at that sort of consumer. So as a result, you are looking at, in my opinion, one of the best, most polished and complete packages at its original price point of $500, let alone this now reduced $279.99. And that's why I'm giving you guys this update, even though it may seem like a full review. It's not, because I haven't spent enough time with it to really give you guys all of the ins and outs, because I know I'm going to find some flaws or things that I'm not mentioning today. One of those I will point out, even though I'm not finished going over the update on features, is that I'm not in love with the lens cap. I say that because even though it has that integrated loophole in order to tether it to the body so you can just let it hang, I can't tell you how many times already in the week I've spent with this that I've accidentally forgotten to pull that lens cap off. And yes, you can chalk that up to being just an Ed issue, but when I hit that power button and the lens extends and hits this cap and knocks it off, I cringe and just worry that that nice piece of Zeiss glass has taken a hit. Because again, that is one of the biggest selling points, in my opinion, is that Zeiss glass really does make a big difference. Again, the HX20 and 30V are great pocketable ultra zoom cameras, but both sport G glass, and in my opinion, while they're fantastic for their price point, they don't offer what you're getting here. And that's probably why, even though they share the same sensor, this does outclass those cameras in image as well as video quality. Do keep in mind, when you're shooting video with this camera at 1080p, 60p, AVC HD, the highest quality mode, you will not be able to take 13 megapixel stills. That is something you can do in every other video mode, although I do still recommend shooting in the highest video quality, because you can always grab 2-3 megapixel stills out of that video, and they will serve a great purpose as long as you're not looking to do very large prints. 8x10s and up, those aren't going to work for, but for traditional prints, sharing on the web, a still capture frame from such high quality video is going to do more than enough, in my opinion, especially for the type of user that's looking to pick up this camera. So if you aren't looking to be one of those people, and I know many of you out there watching this are those people who own a digital SLR but don't quite know how to use it and really do leave it on auto mode, this could be the perfect camera for you. Now granted, Panasonic does make a very compelling model, and they're going to update it as well, much like Sony. It's not as feature rich, doesn't have as much reach, certainly doesn't have Zeiss glass, although it does have a really sharp lens. And don't get me wrong, I'm a Pani fan, have been for a long time. One of my first mega zooms was Panasonic, so I did start with them, and that it had a phenomenal lens. And for those of you who know what I'm talking about, great, but I don't want to sidetrack too much. The point is that this camera, in my opinion, because of its price point, trumps the Panasonic, unless you absolutely have some sort of brand loyalty that goes beyond logic. So right now, this is my favorite at its price point. If you don't care about form factor, forgo the HX20 and 30V, even though the replacements haven't been announced for those cameras yet, even though many are speculating the WX300 is a replacement for it. Trust me, it is not. Sony is going to update those cameras. I'm not sure when. There is no official info on that yet. But overall, there is absolutely no question that this thing is a steal at its current price. I do want to point out the electronic viewfinder does work really well, at least for its price point. That's what I'm going to point out. The fact that it has the integrated Konica Minolta old signature sensor detector for knowing whether or not you're shooting with your eye, or I should say face, or with the the LCD. That's another added bonus that you won't find from the competition, and something that again just speaks to the fact that this is a lot more expensive than that $279.99 price. At least in terms of build and feature set. And that's another critical feature, I think, for those of you out there. There are a lot of you who can't really use an RX100, even though it's got phenomenal imaging capability, far superior to what you're going to find here. And I do mean that, even though they're close in price, because they really do represent complete opposites. The point is that does lack that optical, and in this case, electronic viewfinder. And I know that's going to be a breaking point for a lot of you, because without that, it's really difficult to use a camera for someone who leans on reading glasses. However, for those of you who do not use them, you're going to feel comfortable using either the viewfinder or the LCD screen, which of course does articulate. I mentioned in the unboxing, I wished that it articulated more than this, and that wish is still the same. The 300 doesn't benefit from any wider of a range, so keep that in mind. It is a heavier camera. It does have the added benefit of another 20x optical range, which is mind-numbing. I think that's about 1500 millimeters. Correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe 1800, excuse me. So that's just crazy. But in everything that I've seen, the promotional material from Sony so far, they really have not been showing what things look like at that end of the lens. And I wonder why. Hopefully it's just a short sight on marketing, and not because it's impossible to keep things steady, even with Sony's great optical steady shot and that 3-point active for video. But it's probably unusable is what I'm guessing now. But if I'm wrong, great, because that's going to make the 300 a phenomenal model. But for those of you who do pick up this camera right now at its discounted price point, even though the 300 has that 20x extra range, has a slight bump up in megapixels, also has the added benefit, or I should say, excuse me, not added benefit, it has lost out on the GPS. I do want to point that out. But it does have some more added benefits, such as the new chip, or excuse me, the new imaging sensor, because at least from what Sony has been saying, it's not the same sensor we find here with just more pixels crammed in there. It is a brand new one that does a lot of things better than this camera. But until we actually see some stills from it, and at least until I get it in my hands, I can't honestly tell you guys that there is going to be a tremendous performance gap between these two, because otherwise, I believe the aperture range of the lens has stayed the same, even though it's got that extra distance on it, which is definitely another great pro for the 300. But the biggest thing against the 300, at least right now in this window, which is why I'm addressing it with you guys, is that price point. And if you are comfortable with the 30x reach, if that is what you need, then I can't really see any reason why you wouldn't pick this up at its current discounted price. And I can't stress enough, it's not going to last, because as soon as inventory gets depleted, the new model will be here. Because as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, Amazon right now is showing March 10th, which is, you know, moments away. And even if you want to stick to Sony's date, you're looking at less than a month. So I don't know how much longer you're going to be able to get this camera at this price, because once inventory clears, it'll probably be about $50 less than the current model. That's just the way things work. The only time you can ever get Sony products like this discounted heavily is when they cycle the lineup. And what I can say is that the verdict is still out on whether or not the 300 will be considered a revolutionary model. I know this model was not. It was just a far more polished model than the 100V, at least in my opinion. I like that it has a very strong functioning GPS, as well as the compass feature, so you know what direction you were facing. For a lot of you, you won't care about that, but because this is supposed to be an all-in-one for just about any user to be comfortable with, that's why it does have all of these features. In terms of manual controls, no manual controls in video, but that shouldn't be expected. As I mentioned before, RAW capability, I don't see why you would need it on a camera like this. The sensor is small. You're not going to be able to do a tremendous amount of cropping. I did mention you'll be able to do more than you would with the 20 or 30V, but I just don't see the need for it. So for those of you who are complaining that there's no mic input, no RAW capability, I think you are missing the point of who Sony is making this camera for. For me, as I mentioned in my unboxing, this is all about times when I know my NEX7 or 5N, or maybe even the 7N in the future down the road, I want to get shots that I'm not going to be able to reach on those cameras without a ginormous lens, of course also a very expensive lens, and that's where a camera like this isn't going to deliver the image quality of an interchangeable lens system, but it's going to come really, really close. And that's what makes it a gem, even at its original retail. So while it's not for everyone, I know there's a reason Sony's still making it. There's a reason they're pushing the envelope with the 300. Would have liked to have seen them retain GPS. Not sure if that's a cost-cutting measure or more of a direct acknowledgement that people just don't care about it anymore. But hopefully that's something maybe they'll address down the line, but I know there were rumors that this camera wasn't even going to be replaced because sales weren't so great. So if you were on the fence, if you liked the camera but wondered if it was worth it, I can tell you guys right now, it is. This isn't my full review, even though we're well over 20 minutes, but I wanted to reassure you guys on just about everything I've experienced with it so far, and autofocus has been really fast. Overall, as I mentioned, picture performance better than 20 or 30V, but of course not going to approach the RX100, and it shouldn't, even though they're close in price. Again, different beasts altogether. Last thing I want to show you guys is a side-by-side with some models for scale. Here it is next to the RX100. So just to give you an idea, of course the RX100 looks like a baby compared to this camera. It should. If we put it next to something like the NEX7 with the 18-200 lens, you can see again this camera, the bridge camera, the 200V, a lot smaller and a lot more lightweight since it does not have the metal build that the 7 sports, of course, or the weight and metal construction of this 200mm lens. But do keep in mind that that 200mm lens is the equivalent of 11x. Here we're looking at 30x. So really a dramatic difference, and that's why this camera has great appeal. Shooting modes are all really solid, limited in what you can do in manual controls, but that's to be expected. You've got, I think, 8 or 9 different picture settings and creativity mode. Those are the type of things I'll cover in the full review for those of you who are really interested in seeing those. But for those of you who are trying to decide whether or not you should buy this camera today while it's on sale, I say go for it. Amazon's got a great return policy. If you don't like what you see, or you do have buyer's remorse and really want the feature set that the 300 has to offer, and do consider it revolutionary, even though it takes a step back in some areas just because of that extra optical zoom, since that's what the mega zoom is really all about, folks, then you will have the ability to change your mind if you don't mind going through the hassle of returning it to Amazon. But Amazon's great to do business with. I'm not a salesman for them. I'm a customer, frankly, and that's who I purchased this camera from. So I do recommend going with them right now over anyone else. But that pretty much covers at least the update. I think you guys shouldn't hesitate. Great camera, video, digital still imaging, everything's great. Battery life, amazing. Really like the HX200V. If you guys have any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. And of course, as usual, please feel free to subscribe. Later.